Welcome to GodArs, a podcast and a project specifically designed for all the travelers that come to Italy seeking wellness, spirituality, and the most up-to-date forms of mind and body care.
I'll tell a little story about Timothy Leary, who was the one of the prophets, let's say, of research in consciousness and identity of the mind, the psyche through LSD research. And Eldridge Cleaver, who was the leader of the Black Panthers. That was a militant, military, revolutionary movement in the United States. Now, the Black Panthers, at a certain point, were recognized by the nation of Algeria as the revolutionary government of the United States in exile, and they gave them an embassy in Algeria. When Timothy Leary escaped from prison with the help of an American so-called terrorist organization called the Weathermen, there was only one place in the world he could go, and that was there, because he was enemy number one everywhere in the world. Okay, he was really, Nixon had declared him to be the most dangerous man on the planet, Leary. So he went to the Black Panther embassy in Algeria, arrived there, and he was welcomed as a brother in the revolution. And after a week of being there, talking with Eldridge Cleaver, they put him under house arrest because they considered him to be dangerous. And the danger was that the Black Panthers represented that we had to have a military-style revolution, bring down the powers that be with a war, with a revolutionary military revolution, and then we could work on consciousness and freeing the mind. And Leary was saying, no, it's the other way around. So they considered him to be dangerous because he was undermining their... So he then had to escape from there. And okay, that's a whole other story. It doesn't matter.
He was an outsider wherever he went.
Exactly. Because, he was.
And how is this connected to today's situation?
So what I want to say is that now I think what we've understood is that the old-style revolution, where a group of, militant activists mobilize a sufficient number of people who are ready to go out into the streets with weapons and die to bring down the power structure, does not lead to a revolutionary change, because you're using the instruments that created the problem in the first place. Yeah. And that what needs to happen is the inner work has to be done along with the outer work. And that's why I talk about non-duality, because it's not either you're in the inner work and you're just living in a spiritual bubble, or you're in the real world and then so it's really about bringing these two things together. And then I'll go back to the point in the story where I said that this brings me to where I am right now. In the beginning of the pandemic, I was living in a different community in Italy, in the area of Pontedera, a little village called Marti. There's an initiative called Naturalmente Crescendo, which is a very interesting situation. It's a noble villa, big noble villa with a park, and in a little town of 300 people. And the young baroness is a very forward-thinking person who had 3 children and did not want to raise these children alone. So she started looking for other families to come and join her, and opened this noble villa up to having other young families there. And they created this community in which the children were the center of the thing. So that's why they created an association called Naturalmente Crescendo. And friends of mine had joined that, and I was at that point, before that, I was looking for a home. I was looking for a place where I could bring my activities, the things that move me, that I do, And so my friend said, come here and check this out, because we're also in the process of transforming. We want to start doing things for adults as well. And maybe in this context, you can find a fertile terrain, and we would love to have you here. So I was living there for about a year, and it was very beautiful. I was really enjoying it a lot. We made a film during the pandemic, actually, which was completely illegal because we weren't allowed actually to be 30 people living together, But and we made a film of it. So it was like, really, once the film was done, we were like, okay, now what? We can't show this film to anybody. We'll get arrested, But anyway, but at a certain point, I was feeling like, okay, this is not my final
destination
place. And then in the beginning of the pandemic, I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone and talking about this need I had for feeling home, which I have periodically in my life. It moves me. Yeah. And then she had seen the website, the Facebook page of this new initiative called ASHA, which stands for Alchemy School of Healing Arts. It did not exist yet, actually. There was a website, but the place didn't really exist.
Alchemy School
of Healing
Arts.
Which is ASHA.
ASHA.
Okay. So she said, well, maybe this is interesting for you, and she sent it to me. And then when I read it, I was like, wow, this really resonates, because they were talking about creating a intentional community, but not in the sense of, a bunch of people living together in one big house or something like that, but more drawing people to an area and developing alternative styles of social interaction, but also businesses and the healing arts and consciousness as in a bigger vision, let's say, of all that. And I said, that's very strong. And so I wrote a message to Anthony Abadiano and Amy Rachel, they are a couple who had
the founders
of this. I wrote them a message, and they answered me immediately, and we made a Zoom call in those days, and we immediately understood that we really wanted to
matched.
We wanted to work together. Now,
what year was that?
This is 2020.
Okay.
This is March 2020.
Okay.
So in lockdown, and in fact, their story was that they had been looking for, because they were living before in Bali, and Anthony had developed this thing called Alchemy of Breath. He's a breath worker, and he has a large following online. And this large community online was asking for a place on land where they could actually meet. So they were looking for a place. And so they came back from Bali and were looking around Europe. They had been in Spain, they'd been in Portugal, and then they hadn't found what they were looking for. Then they came to Italy, because Anthony has some Italian ancestry as well. And a friend of theirs, a man named Davide Fusco, who lives in this area and has been living in this area for many, many years, he told them, look, there's this agriturismo that went fallit a few years ago and is closed, has been closed, and it's up for auction. Maybe it's an interesting place. They came in 2019. They came and looked at it, and they thought, no, this place is too remote, and it's not really. I don't know. They weren't really inspired. But then in December 2019, Amy suddenly had a very strong intuition. No, that is the place. So they arranged to come to an auction in January 2020. In which this place was being auctioned. And they were the only people at the auction. Nobody else came. So they ended up buying it. And then they went to England and got stuck in the lockdown there. So when I spoke to them, they were in the UK and I was in Marti. And they were not saying where this place was, because they were being very discreet, because they had this large community online and they didn't want to create a kind of land rush, Yeah. So they were not saying where it was. But in talking to them for an hour or more, since I know this area really well, I have some very, very dear friends here. So I've been coming here for 20 years before that. And realizing that we knew some people in common. And so I kind of figured out, I said, so is it in this area? And they said, yeah. So I said, okay, so when are you going to be able to come? And they said, probably in June. And I said, okay, I'll already be there at that point, so let's meet. And then we did. I met them on day one of Asha, actually when they arrived, and then we started cleaning up and stuff like that. And so I've been involved in this project since the beginning. And
basically, what is the idea that stands behind? What is your dream?
My dream or their dream?
Your dream, their dream, and the possible connection.
Good. So one thing I didn't say as I was leading up to this is, at that point, when I met them online first, I was developing something which was, let's say, the current manifestation of my dream. I mean, there's been a dream in me the whole time that has made practically all my decisions have been fueled by that. I directed a dance theater company in Holland for, not only in Holland, but I mean, it was based in Amsterdam for 20 years, called Cloud Chamber. And even the name of that group comes from a talk that I heard from Allen Ginsberg, who was at that time the head of the poetry department of Naropa Institute, so a Buddhist institution. And Cloud Chamber is a metaphor for the mind, for consciousness, okay? And so it became later the name of my group. And it had to do with a kind of working methodology, which was not like I have an idea and I'm going to tell you and my collaborators what to do, but it was more of a conversation with some out of some questions and some images arose something, and that became what we were doing. And it was a community as well. Not a community in the sense that we all lived together. Well, we did live together in Amsterdam, but we all had our own houses, but we were very intensely involved with each other on many levels. So I was developing something when I met Anthony and Amy called LALA. And LALA stands for Life Arts Learning Academy. And what it is kind of like the weaving together of all the things that have been important in my life. So the art practices, the spiritual practices, and the experiential psychology that I was involved in different moments in my life. So Gestalt and voice dialogue and bioenergetics, and all these things have been very, very important to my development as a human being. And they've always been interacting with each other, but now in this period, I was actually weaving them together into one thing that I was also beginning to be busy with legacy in a way, like, I'm now 78. And so this is, 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I was in my early 70s, and I was thinking, okay, I want to transmit something to people that can also go and live beyond me and help people to, develop and inspire. Because the basic idea of Lala is that we are all artists, and that the artwork we're working on is actually the life we lead. That's the actual artwork. So it's not just about painting or dancing, although these are the practices I've been through: painting, music, dancing, film. I'm always, finding those kinds of outlets for all this, but I don't think that that's the only way. I think that you can be an artist if you work in a bakery or whatever. Because artwork is really, the mind of an artist is a mind that, first of all, is in relation to mystery, because we're always pulling something out of nowhere and giving it a form and a shape and taking care of the details of it. Before we were talking about homoaestheticos, beauty. What is beauty? Beauty is a putting together of various elements in a relationship that somehow becomes more than just the sum of its parts and has a vibrational thing that touches the heart and touches the mind and inspires you into action of some kind. Yeah. So for me, that is the spirit of Lala. And so when I met Anthony and Amy, there was really this idea, okay, Lala and Asha really want to do something together, okay, because we're coming at it from two different corners, let's say, or slightly different paths, but our intention is the same. And it was as if I mean, I say this in a kind of joking way or somewhat ironic, but as if Asha was going to become a country, then Lala was going to be its cultural ministry. Okay?
Cool.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, got it.
But yeah, so that's what brought me here. I also have to say that in the last decades, I've been very much involved in nonviolent communication and another important modality called process work, which is the work of Arnold Mindell and his wife, Amy. And I brought these things to this experience as well. And so I've been, in these 4 years of the Asha experience, as we are now 4 years into it, I have been a person who has been very much looking at how we deal with conflict and how we deal with diversity and creating consensus out of all this somehow. It's been a very challenging, it is challenging, it's not easy. It's also, I mean, it's my heart's, it's the heart of my song, really, my song's heart, my heart's song is what I want to say. I mean, I grew up in a family of a lot of conflict. My parents were all the time in conflict, and I was the peacemaker as a child. And I kind of grew up always bringing people together as an only child, also needing to bring my friends together to play, to create beautiful moments. This has always been my need. It's a very deep need. So I brought that with me here too, and that has gone through many different colors, let's say, and I'm still busy with that. Yeah, and this experience has developed also in ways that were not preconceived, let's say. You know, I mean,
yeah, like in the occupation movement.
Yeah, things transform, and so the idea of creating an intentional community in this area, because if you read the Asha website, which now I've been asked to rewrite actually right now, and I might do that, we'll see. But if they talk about an intentional community with, which never was intended to be on the land of Asha, which is a retreat center. It's a school. Yeah, it's an alchemy school of healing arts. It's a retreat center. It's a business, actually. The term that Anthony uses, he's a benign capitalist, okay? So he wants to generate economy, but in sustainable, beautiful ways.
Ethical ways also.
Yeah. So, but it was never intended that it was going to be a land where the people of the community lived and shared, ate together and all that. It was meant that the community would grow around it in houses and other lands and so on. And Asha would be sort of the community center in a way, okay? Now that has had moments of yes and moments of no, because the people who have settled here did come attracted by the Asha vision, but some of them came with different expectations and were not happy with what they found, but they were happy with what they found with other people and with the area. This is an area of incredibly strong, vibrant nature, pristine. During the pandemic, this was the ideal place to be. We were totally, it was almost as if the pandemic was happening somewhere else, I mean, we were very much aware of it, of course, but it was not an area where you need to borrow somebody's dog to go and take a walk. Yeah. Yeah. We could just go out in the forest and just, you were in the woods. So, so all of that was really, very, very positive in one way. And
Yeah, you were saying about the people that came here, they not always were happy with what they found, but still
But then they became happy with what they found in other ways that were not what they expected. They found other people with whom they resonated. They found opportunities that they hadn't. For example, there are 2 Americans who came who have... He's an acupuncturist. Actually, he's a medical doctor from the United States, but he can't practice medicine here because he doesn't have the license. But he's an acupuncturist, and she has started an artisanal gelateria. Here, yeah, in the town. I mean, it's called Zara Fresca. And now in the wintertime, she's doing kind of alternative organic hamburgers and things because the ice cream thing is obviously not happening in the winter. So, but they're very much part of it's a beginning of something. They're not the only ones. There are other people who have bought land and who are starting collective farming practices with other people who came and bought land here, and they help each other out. There's a great sense of community, but it's not one community with one ideology, with one practice like you would have in a yoga-based community.
In an ashram or
exactly. It's much more diverse than that, which is part of its brilliance and also part of its challenge. Yeah, because sometimes it feels like, we don't agree with what you're doing, but how do we live together and actually hold that space? And this is what I think is the new paradigm involved in this, that you don't have to impose one kind of practice, one ideology, one set of rules. We can share enough common ground and enough diversity as well, and to find a balance in all that. And it's
good enough to be okay for everyone.
That's it. Good enough for now, good enough to try, which is...
But still the Asha Center down here remains the pole of attraction and the place where you all discuss together, where you participate, or it's not actually like that?
Yeah, well, I think we're in a moment of transition around that. I mean, it was that very much for the first year and a half, very much. Then that went, it had to be challenged and questioned. And it did. And at that point, Amy and Anthony, and I was involved in this process very intimately, but Amy and Anthony made an open statement saying that they did not want to be the directors or the architects of this. They wanted to focus on their project, which was a breathwork-based school for healing arts. Okay, that's what their focus is, that. And they did not want to be responsible for or be seen as responsible, because if you're seen as responsible, then you're also the target for all the complaints and all the frustrations. And so they took a step back, and they said, in terms of the community developing, and as I say, I was quite important in all this, because I think I was the first person in one of our earlier sharing circles just before this, so about a year and a half into it, we were having regular sharing circles of the whole community. And in one of those sharing circles, I felt I had to bring up something which scared me to say, actually, at the time, because there was this ongoing thing about, it was kind of almost like a mantra in a way, that people should not be asking what they can get from Asha, but they should be asking what they can give to Asha. And then I thought at a certain point, I think that's part of the problem. That everybody who came here actually came for something that interested them, and they want something back. But we're not being honest about that. So I said, okay, well, let's have a round in which we talk about all the things that we want to contribute to this, but let's also talk about what we want to get back. Because I was seeing very clearly that Asha was a school. It was a business. I have another friend who has another brilliant initiative that's been running for some 10 years called the Laughing Trees Village School. It's a holistic
center
initiative platform. It was a nomadic school like Lala was. It did not have a place. It was just going and doing its things wherever there was interest and wherever it was possible. And in a conversation with her, she's an Austrian woman who's been living in Italy for ages. Maggie Dorder is her name, Margareta. She said, you know what, I'm not interested in community. I'm interested in a school. Because she said a school is a project and creates community. Saying you want to create a community is a very vague concept. People come with different expectations and so on. So, and that resonated very strongly with me. So when I was looking at that, I was saying, oh, actually it's a school. Let it be a school. And let that be the thing that pulls people together, because it's something that we want to learn. Yeah, there's something that we want to learn, and there's something we want to transmit to the world as well. So I brought up that question, and then 6 months later, that led to this moment where, through a lot of other things, of course, it wasn't that I orchestrated all this. I was just one voice, where Anthony and Amy said, okay, we don't want to be the center of all this and have people think that we are directing or wanting to architect this community. No, the community has to self-develop. And we just want to do our thing. So that happened. And we've been in that phase since then.
Welcome to GodArs, a podcast and a project specifically designed for all the travelers that come to Italy seeking wellness, spirituality, and the most up-to-date forms of mind and body care.